Would look at one of the first verses of the Bhagavad-gita today. Now, the Gita has 18 chapters and about 700 verses, sometimes 700, 701, 702, depending on which manuscript you're dealing with. And the verse I'm talking about is the 11th verse of the second chapter. So we're about 50 verses into the Gita, 55 verses into the Gita, which is, whatever that is, roughly a 13th or a 14th of the text. So although I'm saying it's one of the first verses of the Gita, it's actually not one of the first verses, because it takes place a good 50, 55 verses in. But it's the first verse which takes place right after a rasa sandhi. A sandhi is a juncture between two words, or a junction between the day and night. Like somebody asked me what time is Sandhya Arti today. That's the Arti that takes place between daytime and nighttime. So that's the one we're going to do at 7 o'clock. When you join two words together into a contraction, like do and not becomes do not, that's called a sandhi. Or we're reading the Srimad Bhagavadgita. See, that says Bhagavad-gita? It's not Bhagavad-gita, it's Bhagavad-gita. It's the song, the Gita of Bhagavat. And so what happens is, because the T in Bhagavat doesn't roll off the tongue, and if you have to say Bhagavat Gita, the G is soft and the T is hard. And so in Sanskrit you perform sandhi, and Bhagavat Gita becomes Bhagavad Gita, and the T softens to a D. Like we say Jagannath, like we have deities of Jagannath, but it's actually Jagat-nath. The deity is Jagat-nath. But no one can say Jagat-nath. It's too hard to say. It doesn't roll off your tongue. So in Sanskrit you perform sandhi, and the sandhi then changes the word Jagat-nath or Bhagavat Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam becomes Srimad Bhagavatam. Same thing. And so we do the same thing in English when you say don't instead of do not. We have a similar thing. Anyway, that's also called sandhi. And there's sandhi between two words, but there's also sandhi within a word itself. Like if you worship Vishnu, you are known as a Vaishnav. It's because you take the word Vishnu and you add an A to the I in Vishnu. You add an A to that, and then you add an A to the U in Vishnu. And when you add an A to a U, it becomes Va, and when you add an A to the I, it becomes Ai, which is called a diphthong, where it's a complex vowel that has two sounds in Ai, Vaishnav. And so Vaishnav there's an internal sandhi or transformation of the word that takes place within the word Vishnu, for instance. And now a Vaishnav is of Vishnu or related to Vishnu. A devotee of Vishnu becomes a Vaishnava. The same thing is done with like Prita, which is Arjuna's mother's name, becomes Partha. And so, or Kaunteya, son of Kunti, becomes Kaunteya. And so, there's also a rasa sandhi. Rasa is a relationship, and a sandhi is a transformation in the relationship. And so the transformation in the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna that took place just a couple of verses prior was Arjuna finally said, Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava prichami tvam dharma samuta chetaha yatshreya syanischitam bruhitan me Shishasteham shadhimam tvam prapanam. Arjuna said to Krishna, Karpanya dosha upahata swabhava. I've become overwhelmed by the fault of a lack of integrity. Karpanya is from creep, karpanya, kripana, a miser. Karpanya means miserliness, or here we'll say a lack of integrity. Karpanya, dosha, the fault of a lack of integrity. Upahata, I've been afflicted by this, I'm suffering from this, I'm being killed by this. Swabhava, my nature has become afflicted by this. I'm dharma samuta cheta. My mind, I'm a person whose mind has become bewildered in terms of what my dharma is. I don't know what my dharma is. Prichami tvam, I'm asking you. Yat shrehasyan nischitam. Bruhitan me. I'm asking you to tell me what is best for me. Shishyasteham, I am your disciple. Shadimam, instruct me. Tvam prapanam, I'm surrendered to you. This is a change in the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, where Arjuna ceases to be an arguer or a friend of Krishna's, and he becomes Krishna's disciple. And so after Arjuna makes that switch and approaches Krishna like a disciple, then the Gita really begins. And this is the first instruction Krishna speaks after that change has taken place. Therefore, in many ways, this is the first verse of the Gita, because the Gita is the instructions of Krishna. And the instructions of Krishna begin when Arjuna takes on the mood of being a disciple. Do you follow this? Rasa sandhi. There's different kinds of sandhi. This is a rasa sandhi. It's a change in the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna. And that then empowers Krishna to begin really instructing Arjuna. And we're just about to get that now. So Krishna's opening line is Asocyan anvasochastvam pragyavadangscha bhashase gatasun agatasunscha nanusochanti panditaha. That's asocyan anvasochastvam. You are lamenting what should not be lamented. Such means to lament. And just like in English, when you put an A in front of a word, it becomes the opposite. Like theist becomes atheist. So, asochya, not worthy of being lamented. Anvasochastvam. You are lamenting what is not worthy of lamenting. Pragyavadangscha bhashase. But you're speaking learned words. Pragyavadams means wise words. So, although you're speaking wise words, and therefore you want to be treated like a pundit or a learned person, when I'm actually listening to what you're saying, I'm realizing that you are lamenting for what is not worthy of lamentation. Na anusochanti pandita. The pundits, the learned people, they don't lament. Gatasun agatasungscha. They don't lament for those people whose gatasun means whose breath, asu means breath, gatasun, their breath is gone. So if your breath is gone, what are you? Dead. You're dead. Bingo. It's a fancy way of saying dead. Gatasun, your life is gone. Those from whom life has departed. Agatasun, or those people whose life has not departed, therefore the living or the dead. Wise people don't lament for the living or the dead. And although you're speaking as if you're a wise person, in fact, you're lamenting for what's not worthy of lamentation. Prabhupada, in his purport, really hones in on exactly what's being communicated. The Lord at once took the position of a teacher. Why did Krishna take a position of a teacher? Because Arjuna had taken the position of a student. And he'd made that transition, and that allowed for Krishna to instruct. The Lord at once took the position of a teacher and chastised the student. It's not even Arjuna anymore. He's the student. You follow? Like we're dealing with archetypes now. The Lord is the teacher, and he's chastising the student. And Arjuna's name is lost now. For a moment, Prabhupada doesn't even call Arjuna Arjun. He calls him the student. The Lord at once took the position of a teacher and began chastising the student. Calling him indirectly a fool. The Lord said, quote, "You are talking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows what is the body, what is the soul, does not lament for any stage of the body, neither in the living nor in the dead condition." End quote. So Prabhupada paraphrases the verse. But you might miss it if you don't look carefully. But the statement that you are speaking wise words, but pundits don't lament for the living or the dead, and you are lamenting for what is not worthy of grief, is a sophisticated way of calling someone a fool and actually of being deceitful and of misrepresenting themselves, pretending they're more learned than they are. Prabhupada's paraphrase and his extrapolation and his purport and his unpacking of the intended meaning is spot on. The pragyavadams chabhasha say, and you are speaking learned words. You are lamenting for what is not worthy of grief and speaking learned words. You're a cheater. You're a fool. You're a liar. You're deceitful. You're delusional. Don't you know that learned people don't lament for the living or the dead? Don't you know that? First lesson of spirituality. What's amazing is that in many religious traditions, and for many people, getting to a stage where you do not lament the living or the dead is the apex or the zenith of self-realization. And for Krishna, it's his opening gambit of what should be understood as a baseline. So it's almost like Krishna's having to go back and do some remedial work. There's almost like he's irritated or highly critical of his student, that he's not even understood the basics of spirituality. That Krishna has to go back to the beginning and deal with the A, B's, and C's. Of course, Arjuna's playing his part as the everyman so that we may be instructed. And Krishna's smiling while he's doing this, so certainly he does not mind teaching, and he's teaching all of us. But there's this chastising flavor of the verse, which is very indicative of a serious teacher-student relationship. A friend of mine was telling me once that he was friends with his guru before he became his disciple. He had been a devotee for many years. He was friendly with his guru, but he thought of him as a friend. And then many years, 10 years in, he decided, I want to take initiation from you. And so he approached his guru and he prostrated himself and asked him to become his guru. And then, from then on, he said his guru was mean to him. He'd been nice to him for 10 years. Was super sweet to him for 10 years. And then every conversation he was correcting him. And at some point, 6 months, a year in, he said, Guru Maharaj, you were so nice to me for 10 years. Then I decided I want you to be my guru. And so I asked you because you were so nice to me, and now you're just mean to me every time. All you do is criticize me. And he says, yeah, I was your friend before. I didn't have to criticize you. It wasn't my job. Now I'm your teacher. It's my job to criticize you. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's guru, wrote letters, and those letters were copied by his disciples, and then they were collected. Patravali. Patravali, it's a collection of letters on various topics. Patra Avali, Patravali, collection of letters. And in one of those letters, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Prabhupada's guru, says that it is unfortunately the job of a guru to always correct his students. And I have had to take on this onerous responsibility with all of you, my disciples. But you are not a guru, and yet you are correcting all of your brothers and sisters. He's criticizing him for being a fault finder. But the way he chose to do it was, this is a very big burden to correct your students. I've taken on this responsibility. But I do not know why you are. You have not. That's not your dharma. But somehow you're doing it. I just met with one of my Shiksha gurus. I went up to LA to the temple for the initiation ceremony of one of our devotees. And I saw one of my heroes, Veerabahu Maharaj, was there. I just saw from the back. I just saw an old man taking darshan with very tall black socks. He had dhoti and black socks. Practically no one wears a dhoti and socks. And if they do wear a dhoti and socks, no one wears a dhoti with black socks. And I saw the dhoti with black socks, and I thought, oh, that must be Veerabahu Maharaj, who I hadn't seen in many years, but as a young man I joined the temple in Los Angeles, and I would see him every day taking darshan of the deities. And so it was like almost like stepping back in time, because here we are 30 years later, 35 years later, and the same person is standing there. I had to check him because there was some black squares, gray squares where the socks were reinforced on the ankle, or on the heel, On the heel, the socks were reinforced. But he never wore black socks like that before. He would just wear straight black socks. And I saw the reinforced heel, and I was speaking to Swalavas Prabhu, the president there, and I said, oh, that's funny, that looks like Veerabahu Maharaj. He said, that is Veerabahu Maharaj. And I thought, oh, but I had it so riveted in my mind, pure black socks. When I saw the black sock with a gray heel, I thought it must not have been him. Anyway, I approached him afterwards, and we exchanged greetings. And he glorified me. He said, I heard you give class in Vrindavan 2 years ago. Or maybe it was last year. He heard me give class in Vrindavan, maybe a year and 2 months ago. And Veerabahu Maharaj is a brilliant pundit. He said, I heard you give class last year in Vrindavan. He said, I was thinking, you're more learned than me. And of course I said, that's not true, Maharaj. Please don't speak like that. I said, no, you're more philosophical than me. You're more learned than me. He specifically says, I can't touch you philosophically, which I was like, it was disturbing to hear my guru speak like that. I didn't enjoy hearing my guru speak like that. It's nice when your gurus appreciate you, but to have him speak in a way which was self-effacing towards himself while glorifying me, I found to be very unpleasant and painful to listen to. And but I knew what was coming. I knew he was about to criticize me because I know his playbook after so many decades. I mean, I've known Maharaj for 35 years now, so after 35 years I know his playbook. And so he criticized me. And he gave me, it made me inappropriate. I'm not ashamed of the criticism he gave me, but it may be not good it may take us off topic, and it may also be unnecessary for me to speak. But he criticized me. And I appreciate it so much. I told him, I said, I'm really happy that you're hale and hearty. And I hope that you're with us for another 30 years until I'm an old man. Old is relative. You may think I'm old. I'm 50. But because I'm 50, I don't think I'm old anymore. It's always old it's relative to you. So you're whatever, and then old is the next step. You follow? I think he must be 70 plus now. He must be 70 plus now. He was 33 when he became guru in 1987, which would mean he was born in 1954. And so he would now be 69 or 70. He's right there. He's 69 or 70 years old. I said to him, I'm so grateful that, I said, you had to become a guru at the age of 33 because your guru passed away. I said, but I'm so lucky. I'm 50 and my guru, Jana, is still here, and you're still here to correct me and chastise me and point out my faults and make me better. But that's our relationship. I haven't seen him in many years. Live, I haven't seen him personally probably in 10 years. We speak on the phone occasionally, but I haven't seen him personally in 10 years. But the first thing he does, that's not true. I go to see him in Vrindavan. Sometimes I go to Vrindavan, he's there. So maybe I've seen him 3 times in 10 years. But when I go to see him, the first thing he does is he remembers something he can correct me for. And then corrects me. And I feel blessed. We have a lack of training, and we don't understand that everybody needs people in life who are clearly above them, undeniably above them, and who are qualified to correct them. And to not have that in life, to be surrounded by a bunch of sycophants or flatterers or no one, and to have nobody above you, it's just, what a tragedy. We think, we want a guru who's going to glorify us and tell us how good we are. And especially Westerners suffer from this disease. I think Indians in general have a healthier understanding that the job of a guru is to correct. And so, culturally, old world cultures, there's much more of even like when you think of what do you call a teacher in Spanish? Maestro, maestra, literally master. When you look at or in India, what you call your teacher, like your grade school teacher, is guru. Not even guru, guruji. It's like a guru with an honorific attached. You go to Nigeria, in Africa, West Africa, and then, when you go in front of your elders, you lay down on the ground in front of them. You prostrate yourself in front of them. Same thing in India. Touch the feet of your gurus, prostrate yourself in front of them. Like old world cultures have this culture of respect built in. It's even built into the language. ¿Cómo está usted? It's even built into the language, a way of respectfully conjugating verbs so you can refer to people in a respectful instead of a casual way. Somehow we've lost that, especially in the U.S., but largely in Western Europe. And so if you join the Hare Krishna movement, you have to go through a period of reorienting yourself around culture. I don't want to say a cultural revolution because Mao really ruined that one for all time, but you have to reorient yourself around a different culture. And it's not just a culture of different clothes or different music or things like that. It's a culture of respect, and that culture of respect fosters incredible learning. It makes it possible for learning to happen at a very, very rapid rate. Because you don't need a participation trophy. And it's not possible to be in a space where you are self-critical and receptive and looking at your faults and simultaneously be egotistical and flattered and meditating on your goodness. You have to have a baseline of self-respect and self-esteem that you can park your ego and not think about how great you are and think about your faults and focus on them if you really want to deal with them. And so it's funny, but it seems almost like you might say that, it might seem like, somebody who's a disciple, someone who prostrates himself in front of somebody else, someone who listens, someone who has a relationship with somebody where the primary purpose of that relationship is so that you can be corrected and chastised, that there's something wrong with them, that they have low self-esteem, that they're disempowered. My perception is just the opposite. When you have good self-esteem, when you're healthy, then you can put yourself into those spaces where learning can occur very, very quickly without having to flatter yourself, without having to have somebody give you a participation trophy every 15 minutes, without needing to be buttered up and reassured at every moment. You're strong enough where you can just go into a learning mode. And to be in that learning space, A, you have to have enough self-esteem that you don't feel like it's breaking you in half. But B, you have to have enough self-esteem that you've done that. You can park that and you can focus on what needs to be focused on, which is the areas where you need to grow and what you've done wrong. And so it's a synergistic process where Arjuna adopted an appropriate mentality which allowed Krishna to segue into an advanced position of teaching. And it was brutal. Because life is brutal and we have to learn big lessons. And if we're too busy needing to be stroked at every moment, the lessons won't go in. They won't penetrate. We all need to do some serious work on ourselves. We've all got issues, subtle and gross, that need to be addressed if we're going to make it all the way to the zenith of self-realization, which goes far beyond merely knowing that you're not the body. You want to see Krishna. You want to have a vision of Krishna. You need to do a major overhaul. You don't have a moment to waste. And you want every advantage. And one of the biggest advantages you can have is serious humility and the ability to become very receptive with the right people in the right space. And so you see the Gita, this is the subtext of what's going on in the Gita. It's there. You can see it. Prabhupada saw it. I point out to you in the language how this is actually what's going on. But you have to have the eyes to see it. You have to be looking for it. And that's extremely clear. What we're being taught, even before Krishna begins speaking, about the importance of putting yourself into the right space in order to learn at an accelerated rate. And we should not think that humility and an awareness of our own faults humility comes from hum. It means like earth, like close to the earth. Like you're grounded. You're low on the earth, at the earth. You follow? I'm guessing that might actually be the root of the word human. I'll have to look it up in an etymological dictionary later, but I'm guessing that might actually be the root of the word human. It might also come from hume. Like humetic is something of the earth, of the soil. Humus means earth or soil. And so it's not that it's an artificial thing to become humble. It's just connecting with reality. The reality is, Prabhupada told a story about this. He said there are unlimited galaxies in this universe. He actually said there's unlimited universes. And each universe, there's so many galaxies. Each galaxy, there's so many solar systems. Each solar system, there's so many planets. And on each planet, there's so much land. So many countries. Each country, there's so many cities. Each city, there's so many neighborhoods. Each neighborhood, there's so many streets. On each street, there's so many buildings. On each building, there's so many floors. On each floor, there's so many rooms. In each room, there's so many people. And in one room, on one floor of one building, on one street, in one neighborhood, in one city, in one state, in one country, on one planet, in one solar system, in one galaxy, in one universe, you're sitting here thinking how important you are. The sheer vastness of space and time should simultaneously make us very, very grateful to exist. It should also make us very, very humble at the infinitesimalness of our existence, as the infinitely smallness of our existence. How dependent we are on oxygen, how dependent we are on water, how dependent we are on sunlight, how dependent we are on other people. How there are powers far greater than ourselves that we're dependent on. Humility is really the natural state of the soul being aware of its own existential station, of its own existential position. It's not an artificial imposition. It's not a hat trick. It's not some artificial thing you adopt for the purpose of self-realization. It's just not being deluded and megalomaniacal. It's just merely not having delusions of grandeur and being able to honestly assess your place in the universe. And furthermore, your issues and your weaknesses your shortcomings. Just the ability to do that naturally creates humility. And a desire to rise up. And then a teacher who can help you speed up that process, who can help you accelerate that process, becomes your best friend. Brahmachari Guru Kuleva Sandanto Gurohitva Dasavan Nicho Guror Suhridha Saurada. The Guru is your best friend. You should serve him menially, like a servant, like a slave, with a straw between your teeth. And accept that person is your greatest friend. If you can honestly assess your position in this world and how small you are, and how much you need to work on. And you're possessed of an impossible desire to see Krishna. And there's so much ground you need to cover. And you have not a moment to spare. Then that person who can accelerate your growth becomes your greatest well-wishing friend. And naturally, you don't want there to be any hang-ups, any surface tension that would prohibit your smooth and steady accelerated growth. And so you approach your teacher with a proper attitude that you can adopt because you have a decent amount of self-esteem. And you can get down to the business of human life, which is self-realization. And so I met my guru after, very few times. One of the most important people in my life, after many, many years of not seeing him. And the first thing he did was glorify me, which caused me great pain. And I knew what was coming. And so I just held my tongue. I didn't want to argue with him about his glorification of me. I shook my head and made it clear I wasn't accepting the glorification. And I'm sure he was doing that to see if I would get drunk on the glorification. I'm sure he was testing me. And then he chastised me. And he glorified me, and I felt pain, and he chastised me, and I felt happy. As Arjuna would have felt happy that he had such a good guru as Krishna who could correct him. Our scriptures talk about the guru. If you deviate, the guru will catch you by your hair and drag you back to the truth. We don't want that. We want a guru who will glorify us and flatter us. But if we're a real disciple, we want a guru who won't let us deviate, who will knock us into line, who won't let us go. But such disciples are rare. We should at least know that such a possibility exists, and then we should attempt to train ourselves and reorient ourselves with a proper understanding of the importance of the role of a teacher in your life, the importance of the role of qualified people who can give you instructions without any surface tension. And you need to put yourself into a space to allow it to happen, and that's where the magic of spiritual life really occurs. All right. I think I'm done. Rupanugaji, did you want to say something? Yeah, that's right. I feel blessed. My teachers correct me. They chastise me. They yell at me. They correct me. And instead of feeling like, why are they on my case, I always feel like, wow, they really love me. One of Prabhupada's godbrothers, old school Indian guru, he was the leader of a mutt in India, many hundreds of Indian disciples, all monks, lifelong monks. Then he became a big Western preacher, and he toured all over the world and collected many thousands of Western disciples. And his Indian disciples were complaining. They were saying, oh, Guru Maharaj used to love us so much. When we would misbehave, he would take off his shoes, he would beat us. But now he's become a big guru with all these Western disciples, and he never hits us anymore. It's like the biggest insult in Indian culture is you take off your shoes and you hit somebody. I was with one of my best friends in the world I was with, and we were on Padayatra, and he was fiery. He was a German guy. He was fiery, and he's also very He's lived in India for, at this point, I think 40 years. And spent his whole life in India. Learned English in India. Ran the Padayatra, walking with karams, with the wood shoes, traditional wood shoes, for 11 years. Super austere as they come. A real tyagi, a real renunciate, like a real tapasvi. Anyway, we had some local boys with us, some audition boys, really nice boys. They're still devotees, good friends of ours also. Now they become big leaders. But at that time they were young boys, and we went through their village, and their parents said, hey, our sons want to join the mission and become monks. So we just adopted them. And they went out to go buy some hay. But they were foolish. They were buying hay for the bulls, but they didn't know how to buy hay, so they got ripped off. We're in Andhra Pradesh. They got ripped off by some people who overcharged them like 3 times for the hay. And so this devotee found out about it and went and chastised the people who were selling the hay, because he knew what the going rate for hay was, in every state in India, in every season of the year. So he knew they got ripped off. So they were locals, but they didn't know what they were doing. And he was a foreigner, but he knew what he was doing. So he went there and chastised the people like anything. And he took off his shoes to beat them. They're wood karams. Well, you can't really beat somebody with your shoes like that because you'll actually injure them. But he took off his shoes and threatened them. And I remember he came back to the temple and he was completely concussed because he just got too wild and took off his shoes. He was feeling too much like this Guru Bhav. And so somebody came up behind him with a bamboo lati and cracked him in the skull. And he came back like totally dazed and confused because he kind of took the culture too far, and we were in the wrong village. He tried to assert his dominance over the locals. It didn't quite work. It's kind of a random story. Maybe you guys didn't get it. I think it's hilarious when I remember it. But, he was feeling himself a little too much. He was feeling that Guru Bhav a little too much. And he got checked. He got hard checked for it. But yeah, the disciples are like, yeah, my Guru Maharaj, if I step out of line, he'll slap me. I mean, that physical thing, that's like in India, like that's actually the way people feel. But at least verbally we should be able to take that. At least verbally we should be able to get corrected when we're off. We have people in our lives who can tell us what time it is and correct us, and we're humble enough to take it. And if you think there's no one qualified to chastise you, you're really unfortunate. Like you think in your whole community there's no one who's qualified to chastise you? You're super unfortunate. It's a bad, sad situation. I was telling my guru, I was saying, I feel so happy. I can teach people and bring them, and then I can give them to you, and you're always there to correct me and keep me strong. And I said, I lament the day that you're all gone and I'm the senior-most person. I'm crying that the day never comes. Yeah, so we're lucky. We have somebody who can chastise us. We're lucky. And it's not like everybody doesn't get chastised. Krishna's kind of testing Arjuna here. He's giving him a little nudge. He's chastising him a little bit. He's insulting him a little bit. See what Arjuna does with it. If he gets all bent out of shape, then that's where the lesson stops. But if he shows he has a depth where he can take that, then you can really start teaching. You want to say something else?
Just on Arjuna, he was in tears before he got chastised. But after he got chastised, he didn't cry.
Yeah, right? Krishna himself said, don't worry anymore. Mashucha, same root. Right? Shuch, it's the same root. And so, asochan amvasochanscha, nanusochanti pandita, and then mashucha. Don't worry. Don't lament. I will take care of you. Mokshai shami. I'm going to liberate you. I'll take care of it. All right. That's it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.